Patches is a reoccurring character in the Souls series, known for betraying the player character and selling unique items as a thief and scavenger. But how does Patches' modest build compete in practice against both opponents in the arena and bosses in the lands between? I'm Bite-Sized Otaku, and in this video, we'll be exploring how the Patches cosplay could work and seeing whether there are any improvements we can make to take this build to the next level. But like the video and give it to me bite-sized. So Patches in Elden Ring wears the leather set alongside having his iconic face, which will give us top tier drip, but rather disappointing defense and poise, with our defense leaning towards holy. This means we're unlikely to firm a hit with 26 poise, and we'll need to manage our spacing to avoid being constantly staggered by anything and everything. Then we have two pieces of offensive equipment. For our weapon we have the spear, which I've infused with quality and comes with impaling thrust, and the inverted hawk tower shield, which comes with strike. We also have an interesting item called acid spray mist, which reduces an enemy's physical damage for 60 seconds, but it's an absolute nightmare to make as it requires an item called formic rock, which does not respawn and can only be farmed from annoying ants. And you need 4 of these to make one acid spray mist, which is one example of why item crafted in this game needs a major overhaul. We won't be utilising any talismans with incantations until our improved version, and for our stats, I'll note the quality distribution of 45 strength and dexterity, which seemed like a good split of stats for this weapon on the level 137 vagabond. So Patches doesn't have a very varied way of fighting, which makes sense as he uses whatever he can scavenge alongside his iconic shield and spear setup. This means using our shield to block and our varied spear attacks to strike, where we can benefit from thrusts, slashes and shield pokes. But there are some major problems we need to address. For starters, we have no poise and our defense is extremely low, putting us at a major disadvantage compared to other types of builds. We have a very interesting challenge because while we lack ranged attacks to other weapon types, we need to keep to Patch's style and theme, which is the spear and shield. And I think this could mean 2 kinds of builds. The kind where Patches uses cheap tactics and whatever he scavenges like the Moon Veil to give us access to any broken weapon, or a more authentic build which keeps to the spear and shield combo. So let's make some adjustments. For our armor, let's ditch the leather set and use the vagabond armor with scaled gauntlets and greaves. For our weapons, I'll opt to stay authentic, so let's swap the spear for the pike, which will give us longer reach on the cold infusion, and we'd equip it with Stormcaller, which will help us build up cold and enemies. Let's ditch our inverted hawk tower shield for the spiked palisade shield, infused with cold and shield crash, which will help us build up both bleed and frost on enemies, which might be more useful than defending against attacks. For our talismans, we'll use the Erdtree Favor +2, Bull Ghost Talisman, Green Turtle Talisman, and the Shard of Alexander. I won't use any spells, as I want to try and make Patches viable while also being authentic, and we all know how Patches feels about clerics. But let's swap out our difficult to craft perfumer items for the Volcano Pot and Fire Pot, which will remove frost from our enemies and also deal damage. Then lastly, for our stats, I've kept them the same as our vanilla stats, as they work quite well with the improved version, and even with heavier armor, our endurance is enough to help us benefit from improved defense and poise. Now let's take it out for a spin. So this variation will give us much better results, while not going overboard with equipment, which could destroy the Patch's aesthetic. For starters, we have the pike, which has super long reach and is great for compensating for our lack of poise, as our enemies can't stagger us if they can't reach us. The Stormcaller is great for building up frost, damaging enemies, and attacking with brilliant hyper armor, meaning we can often trade with enemies. Then our spiked shield with shield crash is brilliant for dealing damage and building up that frost even further, pushing away foes who get too close, but be wary as the weapon art can leave you exposed for a backstab. Outside of this, our fire pots and volcanic pots can punish opponents during casting animations, but also remove the frost effect, even if the pot doesn't deal damage, meaning we can restart the process. And it's easy to tell from a bird's eye view that this is obviously Patches because our armor is still plain and dirty enough combined with our boldness to sell the overall look. But this build will perform nicely in PvE as well, as you will build up frost on enemies, then repeat the process with a firebomb, which will help to compensate the lack of high damage output compared to other types of weapons or combinations. But one complaint I'll make is that I would have loved to include more items in this build, but the game is lacking in variety when it comes to items you can use in battle, and the ones that you can use, like perfumer bottles, tend to be so tedious to craft that it takes the fun out of playing the game, as you will likely spend hours of your time farming items. And I think items are key for a Patches build, as he tends to be crafty and sneaky with his methods of killing, and maybe the DLC will add new items for battles, which could spice things up alongside making it easier to farm or buy materials. But overall, I think these improvements can certainly help make Patches more efficient in combat by combining Frost and Fire for a combination which doesn't rely on style destroying items or equipment. But what do you think? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, and of course subscribe. This is Bite Sized Otaku, and I hope you enjoyed.